You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. Waiting for my guests to get ready. I've got two of them already here in the studio. And thank you. Now, my third guest is seated, and let me introduce my guest so that we can begin the discussion for this morning. This morning, our table is loaded. And if you have to discuss matters of Dagbon, then you have to know that it's got to be a lot to do for today. So my guest in the studio, our regular panelist, Abdul Malik Kwekubako, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Also here is Martin Pebu. He is a lawyer and loves to spend his time thinking about his country and how it can progress. That's why he's here. Joseph Dindiok Penka is MP Timpani and Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice. Also joining us shortly is James Agalga. He's MP Bulsa North, Ranking Member, Defense and Interior Committees of Parliament and former Deputy Minister of the Interior. He, together with the Attorney General Deputy, should help us with some, legal insight into what the state has been doing as far as the Dagbon crisis is concerned. Thank you very much. So, we start with the NDC. I didn't say welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we start with the NDC, and the NDC now has a new crop of leadership. A really new, yes, some new, some old, back in the driving seat. But this time, led by a man that many thought will not make it. Samuel Ofosu Ampofo is now the new national chairman of the NDC. There's been a whole lot of permutations about the NDC's elections that they held, executive elections, national executive elections they held last weekend. So we'll look at all of them, including complaints from Anita Disoso and also from President Rawlings about the absence of Voltarians among the new NDC executive. Is that true? And what does that mean for the prospects of the NDC in the 2020 elections? So let's begin by listening to Samuel Ofosu Ampofo, who says he will be guided by recommendations from the Kwesi Botwe report. And then we'll hear Jerry Rawlings, who says the people must learn to listen. John Mahama says the NDC must put their best foot forward. And we'll hear Anita Disoso too.
Have led us to where we are today. But the actual implementation towards winning 2020 ought to be tackled by the current executives, because the old executives did it up to a certain point, the reorganization up to National Congress. The new executive will take the baton and continue the ruling. And so we believe that it is a continuum. Where they ended will come and continue until we reach the logical conclusion of it is not only the Feasibility report which will guide us, but our own experiences will be brought to bear. We are living in a very dynamic and fast-changing society. So some recommendations will even outlive its usefulness before we enter 2020. So once new challenges emerge, we'll try to find new solutions to those challenges. And for me, that is all what a dynamic political environment demands.
Mr. Rawlings gave a coded message at the Congress that the party should listen to itself. Do you understand that?
Well, that was philosophical. And people will understand it from different angles. And my understanding is that the party will have to do an introspection, a soul searching. I think the soul searching process is what we have started. Indeed, the outcome of this election itself should tell you that our party is listening to itself.
I can imagine how we would wish for the spirit of the old days. Is it possible to bring it back? I hope so. But that can only happen if we cultivate the habit of listening to ourselves. We've heard ourselves through the speaker. We've read about what we have to say, but I want to make an appeal that we listen to ourselves. We listen to ourselves.
We must elect a formidable and experienced team today, a team that will fortify the already elected regional, constituency, and branch officers to accelerate the process of reorganization and to steer the affairs of our great NDC for victory in 2020.
There is no votarian in the game. All the votarians are out. So let's think about it. So I will end here.
How is that going to affect the NDC going for the 2020 election?
Let's wait later.
You're welcome back. And James, welcome.
Thank you.
Right. Right, and behind the scenes, we're talking about a certain Ampofo Hall conspiracy because Martin Pebu was in Ampofo Hall. He was the president. He handed over to me. James Agalga was a legal advisor to the attorney. He was also, Joseph Dundiok was also in Ampofo Hall and was in the SRC. In fact, also nearly contested Martin Pebu. So let's see how the Ampofo triangle works today. All right, so let's start with the member of the NDC and the member of parliament. Did the results surprise you in any way? There was some certainty ahead of the elections that for the chairmanship, for example, that Dan Abudakpi will win, and he did his best. For Ampofo, who won with 3,656, and Dan Abudakpi managed 2,199. Hudiaya was also thought to be someone who would have done better, but unfortunately he did 1,800 thereabout. Betty Mould, terrible performance, 363, and then Danny Annan, who's supposed to, pump a lot of money into the party, getting 307. Koko Anyido, who people thought was going to unseat, Esiedun Ketia. Unfortunately, he beat him so mercilessly. It was such an embarrassing defeat for Koko Anyido. People didn't expect that also. So, what do you make of it? Sami Jemfi, the 6,000 plus to win as a communications officer, and this is his first attempt at national executive. The Fred Agboyo and the rest of them have been known to be there. So surprises, not?
Well, Samson, first of all, good morning to your viewers and good morning to the public. To start with, I should congratulate my party, the NDC, for holding a successful Congress. It was the largest Congress ever staged in our recent political history. I mean, the Congress hosted 9,000 delegates. That is the first of its kind, plus a number that is in the region of 5,000 observers. But the security detail managed the situation very well, so there were no incidents. The organization went well, except for a few hitches here and there, but that is to be expected. No election is perfect. And so for the position of Deputy General Secretary, there were issues with the former MP for Adenta, Adu Asare.
Yes.
I'm happy that Adu Asare, after everything, has decided that it's not going to litigate over the matter. He places the interest of the party over and above his personal interest.
It does appear that in his case, if he decided to litigate, you guys are in trouble because you will have to, you were definitely going to be ordered to rerun the election at least.
For that particular position.
Yes, and you are going to call back all the delegates into one place to vote.
Thankfully, Adu Asare is a member of the party who means well for our party. And so he decided that, listen, I would shelve whatever rights or remedies may have been available to him in the circumstances.
But he doesn't believe that these things are explainable. To say that Adu Asare turns out to be Justice Yeboah, I mean, how does that work?
Well, Samson, like I said, no election is perfect.
And there was no a Justice or a Yeboah in the election.
Samson.
But apparently you had one with that name in an earlier election.
Yes, the youth election.
Yes. So for me, if you ask me, my own candid view is that that was a genuine mistake. I mean, there is no reason.
He doesn't believe that. He doesn't believe that.
Of course, Adu Asare is entitled to hold an opinion on the matter. I don't fault him at all.
Okay.
I mean, if you are the one, something you tour the length and breadth of this country, sell out your message to the electorate with the hope that you'll be elected, and all of a sudden there's a mix-up and you lose the elections miserably. I mean, you're entitled to hold a certain view on the matter. So I don't fault him at all. But if you ask me as a person, I'll tell you that
Was a notice of poll?
Yeah, there was?
So Premka is asking a question, whether there was a notice of poll.
Yes.
There ought to have been a notice of poll,
yes,
which will be exhibited a little
yes,
earlier
yes,
than the election
yes,
itself.
Yes, there was, but I'm sure the mistake happened at the last moment when the ballots were being printed.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
So that is not to justify the mistake.
Okay.
It's not to justify the mistake. I'm saying that Adu Asare is a human being. He traveled the length and breadth of the country. He spent a lot of money.
He must love the party so much.
Sadly, this mistake happened and he lost miserably. Some argue that no, he would have still lost anyway, but that is not an argument that should be made.
Okay.
Or
so you are making your comments generally on the process.
Yes. So first of all, I want to comment. The process was slow and laborious because of the huge numbers. The numbers were overwhelming. Like I said, this is the first time we've hosted a Congress of that size, that magnitude. But fortunately, it came and passed. Everything went on well. The election was transparent, apart from the Adu Asare issue.
Okay.
There were no complaints of malpractices, and so the declarations were made. Now, talk about surprises. I am not surprised with the outcomes, because right from the word go, we knew who were the forerunners. I mean, for position of chairman, if you asked everybody, they counted Dana Bodakpe, they counted the current chairman, Ofosu Ampofo, they counted Hudu, some counted Betty. So the only real surprise for me is the results Betty Moldidrisu garnered. I thought she would have done much, much better. But these were the names. They were all in pole position to win. At the end of the day, Ofosu Ampofo emerged. So that didn't come to the NDC fraternity as a shock. Because when they were going around the country, if you ask the delegates, and when I arrived at the Congress grounds, you could see at some point the pendulum swung in the favor of Ofosu Ampofo and Dana Bodakpe. So at the latter stages of the Congress, it was obvious that it was a two-horse race, and that it was either Dana Bodakpe or Ofosu Ampofo who would emerge victorious.
Right.
So if Ofosu Ampofo eventually emerged, why should that be a surprise? Now, in relation to the other contests, Koku, Anyidoho, and General General Mosquito, Asiedu Nketia, I think that wasn't surprising. Because if you consider the fact that Asiedu Nketia, before the elections, was the General Secretary and Koku Anyidoho was his deputy. So they worked together. Everything that they did stood in the name of the two, even though Asiedu Nketia was in the driving seat. So seriously speaking, I was a bit baffled when I noticed that Koku Anyidoho had declared initially that he was going to run because General Mosquito had hinted that he wouldn't run. Only for General Mosquito to come out and debunk that claim and say, look, if it was time for him to make an exit, he would make a public statement to that effect. I thought at that point, Koku should have advised himself and withdrawn. Because what message, what credible message was he going to be able to canvass for support against General Mosquito when the two had indeed worked together? So if it was the case that they failed, it was the collective failure.
But Seydou Nketia has been General Secretary for how long? And Koku has just done only one term as a Deputy General Secretary.
So I would have thought that Koku...
What I mean is that Seydou Nketia was thought to have done enough. You know, he was sort of a Mugabe of a General Secretary, so to speak.
No, Samson, at every stage, he took part in a competitive election and emerged victorious. So the Mugabe accolade, you know, is inapplicable here. You see, so the NDC party as a whole believe in the good works of General Mosquito.
Okay.
And on every single occasion that he's contested elections, he's emerged victorious.
Okay. A number of things have come out of the election, that process, and I'll ask you about them, but can we move on? I'll get back and ask you about them.
Yes.
The fact that only, you know, President Mahama was allowed to address the occasion. Yeah. Meanwhile, there were other contestants who were not allowed. I mean, Sylvester Mensah feels this is unfair. It shouldn't happen. There was a campaign song for Mahama that was played at the grounds, played for a long time. I mean, how are you creating a fair grounds for all the parties involved? Yes, Martin, what do you make of the new crop of leadership?
I should say that it represents, to some extent, new branding for the NDC. It's good because, you know, NDC too had largely been seen as a party for Voltarians and Northerners, right? Yeah, so to the extent that Ofosu Ampofo now represents the face of the party, being the chairman, I think that is good. It's good because we can't run away from the fact that politics is about numbers. So where now the chairman is from an Akan-speaking area, at least it represents a shift. And that is good for them because it will help to galvanize so that we no longer see it as only for Northerners and Voltarians. So to that extent, it's good. But also the issue
all the important officials, there's none from the Volta region, so to speak, from chairman, organizer, communications officer. So
yeah, but Rawlings was in power for such a long time. He won 2 elections. In those days, well, I don't seem to have heard that people from the Akan-speaking area said no because he had been the PNDC president for that long, and also he stood for election as on the ticket of the NDC. Then that meant that they were marginalized. Okay, so I just think that, you know, in life these things happen. There will certainly be shifts and turns. So I think in the long term it's good for them. It's good for them because it will help to galvanize the Akan-speaking people for them, and it's all about the votes. Remember, was it Buzia who said it's better to be a messenger in a ruling government than head of opposition. Bottom line, they should be looking at the numbers they can gather in the elections. Who will support them? Who will vote for them? That's what it's about.
But you protect your stronghold first, your World Bank. This is where you get most of your votes. Without them, you barely can win elections. So you protect that place, solidify it, and then go out, look for others.
I think they would go behind the scenes and pacify the Voltarians because, you see, if you ask, in another way of analyzing, if the Volta region is seen as the World Bank, then that means that that's a constant. So why don't you rather do it in such a way that you seek to woo other people in? So that is why I think that is good, because when you do that, then you woo other tribes in. Because you know the way it is, somebody will tell you that for both parties, there is a certain constant figure. Yes, so you take measures that will make sure that you are attracting new members, not to just pacify the
Since you have focused on that, do you think that the calls that are already coming that, you know, the vice presidency or vice presidential, you know, ticket should be viewed from the Volta region, do you think that will work? That will be something that the party will consider seriously?
If you ask me, provided, you see, right now, The vice slot, I'm not exactly sure how that would work out because, you see, as I said, because Volta region is the World Bank of the NDC, so that's taken as a constant. So I'm sure behind the scenes they can do something to pacify them. So if that's taken as a constant, you should take measures that will enable you to get more supporters. So they should look to the account-speaking area rather. They will be better off with an account-speaking vice president than with a Voltarian, because, or let's say ever speaking, because in the Volta, you know, there are what do you call it? There are accounts and other Northerners a lot too. Right. Okay, Northern speaking language. So Volta is quite mixed. So on that score, it's better to pick an account-speaking vice president. Okay, that would represent a balance in the ticket, the North-South kind of ticket. That's better because you should look to bring in new members. You see, look to bring in new members, and then there are ways to pacify those at the back. But also, just to further make the point, Ampofo made the point on Thursday, thing on the drive show, that there are 7 Voltarians on the executive committee. There are 7. So perhaps they should do well to drum up these names, okay, bring them up often as much as possible so that people would see. Because right now it's as if the phrase that there's no Voltarian in the front line seems to have taken a commanding lead. Meanwhile, it is
viewed from the leadership. So, chairman, organizer, secretary, those things. Yes. That's how they're looking at it. Yes. And all those who contested were whipped.
But understand too, there's a matter of the vice slots. There are some that are appointed, right? So definitely, I'm expecting that they would appoint a Voltarian from that slot. You say. But any day, I think they should do well to bring, since it looks like JM is going to win the ticket, they should bring an account-speaking vice candidate. That would be better.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Yes, Kweku.
I was just wondering for a moment, vice chairmanship, that's part of the front line.
That's right.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, vice is
it's a question you are asking. Okay.
It's front line enough.
Are you sure about that? Yes. You see, all this would have been needless if the NDC itself had not embarked on a certain crusade to tag the MPP particularly as an account-dominated or an account party based on outcomes of their primaries and contest. It would have been needless. You're looking for people of competence and of organizational capability to do a job defined. So they go out there and they execute it. But over the period, particularly under this Fourth Republic, any time the MPP went for elections, whether on the parliamentary level, party executive level, constituency level, or national presidential level, predictably, our brothers and sisters in the NDC would read ethnocentric dimensions into it. Okay, a sitting vice president went to an election, a presidential primaries of his party, and lost. And they said, no way. Why wasn't he selected automatically? Like something like a straight-through declaration to that effect. But he lost a contest democratically.
But the account dominance is a fact in the NPP.
No, but you don't tag them as an account party, which they did consistently. And always based on outcomes of primaries, of elections. Key point, democratic competition is what brought up this list that we are dealing with relative to NDC. It's democracy. It's the will of the delegates. Primary point. They ignored that primacy of elections, of democratic competition that brings up people, regardless of their ethnic or tribal origins. And knowing political science, people knowing that then will put in their constitution the clauses for appointive offices so as to balance. Yes. So all this was there already. So why was NPP an account party?
When the Vice President Aliyu Mahama contested and lost the manner he did, the people who were behind him, who supported him, A.C. Boateng and the rest of them, accused their own party.
Exactly.
They couldn't believe that if Vice President Aliyu Mahama were an Akan, he would have, suffered that miserably.
Did he go to an election or he did not go to an election?
But those things they say feed into all that people are also talking about.
The same thing with the NDC. Anita D'Souza, is she an MPP man?
Of course
a
not.
woman?
Of course
sorry.
not. Jerry
And it happened to, look, in the NPP, you had a situation where Ayiku complained. Even Akomia, in withdrawing from the recent competition, said he was withdrawing because he didn't want it to be top-heavy Akan, isn't it?
That's correct.
You had Ohini too, who also made such a thing. So within and without have been people who have made such statements. And all this regardless of the fact that, bottom line, it was going to be democratic competition. And that in your constitution too, you have a saving clause that can bring in others so as to balance, knowing that we are dealing with a certain reality.
Okay.
Why the people resorted to mischief, political propaganda mischief, in order to tag. I'm saying otherwise, this is not an issue.
Okay.
Truly speaking, in principle. As long as they went through a democratic process. Okay?
The constitutional injunction is that a party must be nationally representative.
Which they are, because they have constituencies everywhere, regional executives everywhere. That they are.
Okay, so that injunction is not to reflect in the executive or the leadership, but the membership.
But thank you.
But maybe
it's
the one
branches.
about ministers.
It has branches and everything. Okay, when it comes to the government, when you form the government, then you are guided by the constitution, where they talk of regional.
Chapter 6. Yeah.
We have set up a system to be able to operate. We know it's not perfect. When you introduce mischief, then you distort the whole thing. You pollute. And I'm saying they have been responsible for polluting this environment for a very, very long time. So when this thing happens, people say, well, welcome, come on. Otherwise, my brother, it's not a big deal. I'll be honest with you. Because you can cure that mischief. They can cure it by the analysis we are doing here.
Okay.
Maybe one should move away quickly from there and deal with other issues, unless you are going to lead me with questions. But look, something struck me, and I've reflected on it deeply. Mr. Ofosu Ampofo, there's no doubt, he's a gentleman's gentleman. Occasionally you may have some one or two slippages here and there, but I think he's a perfect gentleman. And politically too, he has sufficient track record. I wasn't surprised he won the chairmanship. In fact, I predicted that. I didn't predict. I thought he was the best person. Okay. Because I don't understand electoral predictions. And he did win. But his victory speech contained an element that I've been reflecting deeply on for a while. And I think that could be dangerous if we are not careful. Did I hear him propose the setting up or the establishment of a ballot box protection unit?
Yes, he's emphasized that after the election.
What is it for? What's the purpose?
Says there were places that NDC polling station agents, even in the counting of ballots, were forced to sign onto numbers that they disagreed.
You have the evidence?
And if they didn't do that, they would be...
You have the evidence?
They'll be harmed.
Empirically, do we have the evidence?
Okay.
That in MPP strongholds, during which election? The last one? We have the evidence that in those strongholds, NDC polling agents were chased away or intimidated or forced under duress to sign on to figures they didn't believe in.
The MPP has made similar claims for what they do in the voter
That is the point I'm making. Yeah. That's the point I'm making. So I'm saying that it's a prescription for electoral chaos.
Okay.
If it's effected, how is it going to manage it? There will be a substitute to the police or a complement to the police. How would it be done? How is it going to do it?
He says so that their agents will feel confident that they have the backing of their own security, so to speak.
The practicability of it. How is it going to be done? You form this unit. There is a constituency. Elections are going on. They have polling stations. Where do you place them? Who and who are allowed into that orbit?
Perimeter.
Who and who are allowed to observe the counting and to take steps if something is going wrong? By law. By law. We have electoral regulations and rules. We have laws. How is that going to be factored in? Is it going to go to IPAC and everybody will agree so we all form ballot box protection units?
The NPP has been deploying over the period university students and so on
but I'm
into
asking
some
you,
of these
how
places.
is that done?
And they don't go
done?
merely as agents sometimes, right? They just go to assist the process.
My brother, we don't want to clean up the act.
Okay.
What we are trying to do is to mess it up. Look, our electoral system has grown a lot from the days when the ballot boxes were opaque, from the days when we didn't have photo ID cards, from the days when even polling agents had not been trained. From 1994, post-1992 elections, our electoral system has gone through a lot of reforms to the stage that we now have a biometric system. I have been observing our election history for a while. I don't see the empirical basis for the new chairman of the NDC to tell us that they are going to form this unit to protect their polling agents and the ballot boxes. How are you going to do that? You tell me, without chaos on the election day.
Interesting.
So for me, that was a disaster.
Okay.
Why is a good man and a reasonably good man? I think this one was flawed.
Interesting.
And if he triggers this, he should be prepared for possible electoral violence on the day of elections.
Right. Okay, so let's hear Penka. What do you make of what has gone on? And the NDC is predicting that you guys are in for trouble in 2020.
Oh, wow.
that's
very interesting. You know, of course, that's what they are supposed to say. When you're in opposition, you want to come to government. You need to encourage yourself with things like that. But of course, I would find that to just be tickling yourself and laughing. Of course, they could not have elected their executives and said that those they have elected are not good people to win them 2020. What they have said is just a natural consequence and flow from whatever anybody will say after an election. No doubt about that. But just on three critical issues, the issue of the delay, the delayed Congress and all that, I think that they could have done better. One of the ways was to have created many more polling stations and all that, to be able to facilitate the voting process, anticipating the numbers that they had at the place. So that was one of the ways they could have handled it, because it was really very laborious and very long. But Samson, one other critical issue that I want to emphasize this morning is this issue of the Akan-dominated executive. I come from a geography where, I mean, you know very well that one of the most difficult terrains to campaign as far as the New Patriotic Party is concerned is some places like my own, where, I mean, people think that they perceive that MPP is an Akan party and all that. That's a fact. And because of that, their campaigns become very simple. They just go tell the electorate that, look, this person, however you like him, he's contesting on the ticket of a party that is an Akan party. And so don't vote for him. That's all. People do that openly, Samson. This is a fact. And so today, if you have a national chairman as an Akan, you have the general secretary as an Akan, you have the youth organizer as an Akan, you have the women's organizer as an Akan, you have the communication officer as an Akan. You see, some of them have changed the narrative. They are struggling very hard to now explain what is happening, because that has been the easiest way to run away when they are campaigning. And so they are unable to repeat this in 2020 and all that. And of course, we are ready for them. And I can assure you that the very executive that delivered the mortal blow to NDC in 2016 are the very ones who are managing our party now at the highest level. And they know the terrain very well. They are not strangers to it. I can assure you that they are very much prepared, and all of us are prepared to ensure that the New Patriotic Party records another victory. But looking at the comments, putting all the comments in their perspective, of course, you heard Anita D'Souza and the statement she made about the Volta caucus and all that, and His Excellency former President Rawlings, and etc. Some of them may be playing with those statements and thinking that they are trivial and etc. But that is reflecting the thinking of some people, a section of the party. And the earlier they looked at it, the better. We wish them well, but I can assure you that the team they have assembled in 2016, the elephant will keep them easily and retain the Jubilee House. I have no doubt in my mind at all. You see, what we should do, Samson, is to campaign from now on based on ideas, not on ethnic issues. And I can appreciate what my very senior Uncle Kweku Baku did say, that some of these things are needless.
you know, you will say it today and tomorrow you leave for it to haunt you seriously. Because, I mean, as I said, there are some of them who are propagandists par excellence as far as that aspect is concerned. So anytime they get the slightest opportunity, they don't discuss ideas, they talk about ethnicity and ethnocentrism and all, whipping up sentiments and etc. And with this situation staring them in the face, it's going to be very difficult, extremely, for them to be able to repeat such things going into 2020. And so they'll be compelled to restrict themselves to discussing issues rather than talking about ethnicity and ethnic politics and all that. Because that will not take us anywhere anyway. So I would like to also, another thing I would like to add is what was said about Adu Asare and a very unfortunate situation. That's why I asked that question at the beginning, whether there was notice of poll. If there's notice of poll, normally I have contested several elections as an assemblyman and etc., regional executive of the party, parliamentary. Anytime about a week or two to the election, they bring you notice of poll for you to check spelling of name, you check your photo and everything, and then you ascertain that it is right before they go to print the ballot. And if there was notice of poll and the Honorable Adu Asare saw that this is my name, this is my picture, everything is right, and it went back, how did it change? Because when the notice of poll is corrected, all that you need to do is to go back and run that. How did the name change and all that? So he had questions that he could ask. And as you rightly pointed out, he has decided that he was not going to go to court. But if he had gone, you are right. They would have had to convene a national delegates conference again to be able to elect only that particular group, you know, and that could have cost them a lot. But luckily for them, he has decided that he's not going to pursue it. But my little advice I can give them is that let's focus on
they may
issues.
have also found some, you know, nice ways of doing it, innovative ways. Let everybody stay in their region. They create the situation that you go there and vote.
Well, but that would have been novel, isn't it? That would have been novel. So what I can say is that we wish them well, and we are very much poised and ready to deliver to Ghanaians on our promises so that 2020, the good people of Ghana will judge us.
Okay. But there's been suggestions because of what the NDC has now presented, which you say now they find it difficult to, as it were, advocate, you know, or justify, because they had always been saying, you guys are Khan dominated and this is what it is. There have been suggestions, even from the NPP earlier, that these elections should be scrapped so that you leave them to appointments only. The NPP has a better system, so to speak. They say you elect some and then you appoint some.
To balance that, it's in our constitution.
And it's expensive for these parties, particularly when you are in opposition. When the NPP was in opposition, they couldn't organize some of these conferences, you know. So what do you think?
Something we did. We did organize.
There were times we were broke. You told the world you were broke.
Even if we were, but we still organized.
Sir John told the world
never compromised that.
You needed $1 million cedis
we have
that
never
you couldn't
compromised
get.
that. You see, something, the issue of elections.
See, the NDC has organized this term without any problems. If it happened that they didn't come back to power in 2020, watch the next election.
The next election,
you find they will be difficult. It's always the same thing.
You see, I mean, the difficulties in raising funds in opposition, I mean, nobody is to dispute that. It is there. But if you are a well-organized party, you should be able to bulldoze your way and be able to organize a very successful Congress and all
so
that.
Should
this
be appointed rather than elected?
No, I don't think that I will support the appointments. You know, as it stands now, you see, competitive election deepens our democracy. There's no doubt about that. So if you just sit back and say that, look, let me look at somebody's face and nose and determine whether or not he's qualified to be chairman and etc., that will even be another recipe for chaos, because you will have to form yet another committee that will be responsible for this, because all party members will not be able to come together to say that, look, we are not electing, but we think that this is the person. How are you going to do that? You could create another chaos for yourself.
Chairman Sabolsu was referring to best practice in the UK.
No, he was talking about the constituency level.
Okay.
That, look, when you have been elected as parliamentary candidate, you choose executive who you can work with. That was the suggestion he was making, which was not accepted eventually by Congress. Okay. And so he was thrown out. It wasn't. Right. I was part of that committee that looked at it and all that. But I can assure you that for the issue of looking at electing people to represent the party at all levels, there should be no bargain to that.
Okay, let me hear Martin Pebu on a minute on that one, whether it should be elective or appointive. It's an expensive enterprise, and maybe you tie in with that. you were seeking to refer Kukubako to the Constitution on the need to be balanced on the regional basis. So you are also saying that the election of the executives should be guided or reflect Article 36(2)(d), where it says, undertaking that the state shall in particular take all necessary steps to establish a sound and healthy economy whose underlying principles shall include D, undertaking even and balanced development of all regions and every part of each region of Ghana, and in particular improving, okay, that's not the one I'm talking about.
So the point was that probably the 78 that is inspiring.
Right, which talks about making sure that there's regional, balance in appointments.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you are saying that this is what should reflect in at the party level.
I'm saying
how can they achieve that?
Good. So what I'm saying is that the calls, those making the calls that Voltarians have been marginalized, perhaps they are inspired by this article. So I'm just saying that I'm constructing an argument. For me, as I've said, I tend to accept that, look, delegates have decided, so we should go with the delegates. Then the appointive positions, the vice chairmanship slots, those that are appointed, then we'll put in Voltarians. So for me, I'm not necessarily saying that it should reflect 78. What I'm saying is that people are clamoring because they are used to 78. But 78 comes in when the party is in office. But it's good. It's when there's dissent, when people argue, you get better results.
Right.
Okay, so perhaps in doing this, we'll get better results. But to come to your question, whether they should continue with the elections or appoint, I think the elections are good. The elections are good because you see that for each position, the candidate comes up and espouses his ideas. So it's a contest of ideas, generally, though we know that there are ethnic undertones and all those things. But we can't run away from the fact that it's a contest of ideas. And that helps because it helps to galvanize the party, it helps to draw up a new manifesto so that they can challenge the certain government. So we should go with the elections. And when people are involved, when it is participatory, then in that way, because they are involved, the masses are likely to contribute more and to become more politically aware, and so to make us, to help us develop better. Yes.
This ballot protection unit that Ampofo is talking about, are you as against it in the way that Kwekwe is?
No, not at all. I think that I'm not exactly sure from what you've read that he intends to use violence as such. No. My understanding of it is that they will have people who will help. It means that their primary focus will be watching out things strategically to see how the ballot is protected. For me, to the extent that he hasn't said they are going to use force, they will bear arms and the rest, I think we should probably give him another opportunity to come and tell exactly, because so far he hasn't said they are going to be arm-bearing, officers.
But the example he gave on that show that you listened to, Lexus Bill's personality profile, he said they have been to places where they have been threatened. They have been beaten. So the police is not sufficient protection for them. When they have these people behind them, they will have the confidence to say, I will not sign this one. I will not do A, B, and C. And they will know that they have a backing. Nobody can, touch them.
Because it's numbers.
Let's assume there's a counter from the other side. What Uncle Kweku was saying.
Yes, but he hasn't said
it will be very chaotic.
I haven't said here that he said they will be armed.
Yes.
I haven't said that.
So
the man proceeds from a premise of intimidation of their people, threat against their people. And the ballot protection unit, they are just going to stay there and watch. That's the protection.
So it's at the election, each party has a representative to watch. So my understanding is amplification of the numbers, that's informally. So beyond the official numbers, then others will stand to give.
Where?
So behind. Definitely they will be within.
They are not allowed by the electoral law to stand
within the perimeter.
The only time all voters or general public can come to be part of the process is when the counting starts.
Exactly. So my understanding is that these guys call them like stand by in the event that maybe they see that the ballot will be whisked away, then they come into support. for me to
What is the police supposed to do?
Yes, they are supposed to. They are the frontline people, but we've also we are aware. You know, we don't want this on this platform to state certain things, but you're also aware that in certain parts of the country, people have been beaten and the ballot box has been taken away. You know, it's part of our history.
Okay.
So for me, if the NDC wants to take precautions to the extent that
saying that is criminal.
No.
Where is the evidence? Give the evidence to the police. Let them deal with these people, or refuse to deal with them, and then we can come to...
No, but that would be ex post facto.
Okay.
Ex post facto, that won't help them. Look, listen, these guys, you see, politics, you and I, or let me speak for myself, I may not understand it that much, okay? But for a national party chairman to say that he needs that unit, please, let's not second guess him that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay. So what we should be thinking about is how to beef up the police protection too, so that if it is that they aim to rather cause violence, then that would be...
Well, Franka, we know, and I'm coming to you, James, for your time too. We know that the police have largely failed us, particularly for members or persons who are sympathetic to the party in government. The police have largely failed us when electoral infractions are committed. And these people often, they are arrested, you know, handed to the police, and nothing happens. So should he abandon this idea, or he has justifiable reason to pursue it?
Samson, I hope and pray that his plans and ideas remain on paper. That's my prayer. If he carries it through and implements it, and those people are allowed at the polling station, there will be so much chaos that what he is talking about, he has no idea at all. I tell you, you see, we are guided by history. If the Electoral Commission says bring 2 agents, and you decide that apart from the 2, you are bringing 10 others, and then another party says, hey, the NDC people, 10 of them are coming, so let's send 20. Another one says, hey, there are 20, so let's send 30.
Oh, cancel. I don't think
I'm
that's
just
right.
giving you an example.
Even to the extent that we say that they can't come into the perimeter.
Somebody will counter it.
No.
The place. So you guys could start outside
so
the
it means that the
perimeter.
people are stand by from a distance. They are not coming onto the perimeter.
But it's Spencer's not an over-exaggerating.
Exactly. We shouldn't be doing that.
When you nominate only 2 people, you are even unable to feed them.
Exactly.
Often they are complaining about food. So how are you going to take care of that?
Let me give you an example. If you have an agent at the polling station, 1 or 2, and then as he proposes, let's even say 4 other or 5 others, standing at a distance.
Exactly.
What will be their influence at the polling station?
So, stand by force.
So what will be their influence?
No, just for
the explanation which we are running away from is
monitoring.
Look, if it is monitoring purposes, it has been happening already. Parties do those things. It's been happening. So for monitoring, they monitor all the
different from what he's
But what he's talking about is
ballot box.
Within the same.
How do you operate? How do you protect the ballot box?
I know that you cannot come in there.
Let's get back to James.
Extra people
Let's
cannot
get back
come
to
within
James.
the perimeter.
James, first on this issue, let's hear what your view is. Of course, you will endorse your party chairman.
Absolutely.
Why?
And I'm surprised my brother, the Deputy Attorney General, is alarmed that the NDC chairman talks about protecting the ballot.
He's looking at what the law permits, and you are aware of the law.
Is it not the civic responsibility of every citizen to ensure that the ballot box is protected?
How?
It's our civic responsibility. You see, however, whether it is through monitoring, whether it is through vigilance, or whether it is through, ensuring that your observers at the polling stations are well fed, they are all monitoring mechanisms.
What is the purpose of the law electing and designating a certain category of people for that purpose, and to also have state security for that purpose? We should
be guided by our history. And like my brother Martin said, there have been instances in this country where ballot boxes were snatched by macho men.
That's correct.
Of political opponents. And so, if a party chairman comes
out... Let me ask this.
2016, several instances.
Oh, no, 2016, can we cite one instance?
Please. We're guided.
Exactly, that's why I'm asking. Look, one
instance. It's James's turn. Let's listen to him. Yeah.
But, I am surprised that my brother Joseph, the Deputy Attorney General, argues in this manner. Look, we're all in this country. When the MPP brought in mercenaries from South Africa to train vigilante groups. What was the mission?
What did you do to them?
The mission was for those vigilante groups to protect the ballot box.
What? Oh, no.
Absolutely, that is the plain truth.
What did you do?
We arrested and deported the mercenaries.
Why? Why?
Because in the case
they were engaged in an illegality,
they were training them on how to use firearms.
You say
that was a dangerous development. That was a dangerous development at the time. That is the plain truth. They brought in the tag soldiers.
The invisible and Delta forces. The invisible and Delta forces of the NPP. Are they in ballot box protection business, or they provide security for party officers?
If you listen to the NPP,
no, can you answer that question for me?
If you listen to
which
the
one
NPP,
is it? What do they do? They do both.
If you listen to the NPP, the original idea behind the formation of those groups was to ensure that the ballot box was protected. Then the role escalated. The role of the groups, those groups, then escalated to the protection of the presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate. You should listen to Nana Kumia. You should listen to Nana Kumia justify the training that was given to those groups by the South African mercenaries. It was disgusting. But you see, Samson, today, because they have treaded on that path before, they are now jittery that the NDC intends to do something similar. Ours is polished. We are not going to train vigilante groups to cause mayhem at the polling stations. All we're saying is that our men would be vigilant. We would ensure that our men are vigilant. They would monitor the ballot.
By my understanding,
they would work to ensure that our people are not intimidated at the various polling stations across the country.
It does appear, because of the overwhelming public criticism of your announcements of the Hawks and what do they call them? You call them something, the Hawks and others, that you outdoored. So you are now trying to give them a different name, Ballot Protection Unit, rather than the Hawks and the other things you want to call them.
These are intellectuals who would be trained. Intellectuals who would be trained to resist intimidation at the polling stations.
Intellectuals have no potential
who would be trained
violence.
To resist intimidation at the polling stations. It has nothing to do. But Samson, let me make a quick point in relation to the Akan tag that the NPP has received over the period. You see, anytime we say the NPP is an, and I'm a student of history, anytime we say, our senior knows, we say this within a certain historical context. Who are the forebears of the NPP? NLM. It was a regional party. It is as a result of the behavior of groups like the NLM, who are the forebears. Of course, UP, NLM, they have the same history. Senior, can I land?
The Togoland Congress, a non-youth organization, and the NLM, 2 or 3 others are immediately forgotten, combined to form the UP. Is that not true?
That's true.
Oh, but can I land? Before the combination,
so why do you single
before the combination, these parties were regionally aligned. NLM, Ashanti Bronga Hafo, Northern People's Party, the Northern Territories, Transvolta, Togolese, whatever, the Volta region.
So what is it that you are suggesting?
It is for that reason that the Constitution now prescribes the formation of parties along regional lines.
That was done even before.
But I am saying on authority that the forebears of the NPP is the NLM. There's no denying the fact. Of course, with time, the Northern People's Party amalgamated with the NLM and it became UP. But I'm saying that the principles of the party revolves around the ideology that was espoused by the NLM. And so when we say the NPP is an Akan party, it is the historical context which should be taken into account. But today we all know that under the Constitution, under the Constitution, nobody can form an Akan party because that party would be a regional party. So when we say NPP is an Akan party, let us take the historical context into consideration. That's the point we're making.
Incredible.
No, seriously, it's a historical fact. Kweku, that is a historical fact.
I cannot digest
so, Samson, seriously, let us
interesting. But what do you say? Your take on whether or not these things should be elective or rather appointee so that you cut your cost and all?
Yeah, something seriously, I am one person who is opposed to the idea that certain category of party officials be appointed. Okay. Seriously, the NPP does it. We attempted recently to introduce some constitutional amendments. I am opposed to the idea. Fortunately, the plan was shelved. I hope it is discarded. I mean, it is undemocratic. Let the officers of the party go in for open contest. Whoever emerges victorious, I mean, it's your time, you work. If you are unable to deliver, you go back to the electorate and account for your stewardship. Okay. I don't believe in that.
Should we try in a minute? Should we try and interpret what President Rawlings was saying? That the candidates should be listening to themselves.
Yes, President Rawlings has explained himself. He talked about conscience, that people should listen to their conscience and act, because one's conscience is God's voice in your inner person.
Meaning what in the circumstance?
It means that, well, in the circumstance, Rawlings simply meant that the NDC should be upright. We should allow certain basic morality to be infused into the body politic of the NDC. That's all.
What was he saying?
All Rawlings has been emphatic that monetization of politics to stop. He has been emphatic. He says that people use money to influence delegates at all times to elect, and that thing is what is killing the spirit of probity and accountability.
Money over
of the
choice.
NDC. Yes, that's it. So now he's saying, listen to yourselves, so that you take out the monetization. You could take money from somebody who says, take it and vote for me, and yet vote according to your conscience. This is what he's been saying.
On this occasion, no.
But
on this
occasion, that was what he meant. There's no doubt.
Don't respond to him. Let's look at this, and then I take a break. Just 2 minutes each for all of you.
Yes.
Why was Mahama allowed to speak? And why was his campaign song being played when all the other 15 other aspirants, presidential hopefuls, so to speak, were not giving the same opportunity?
There was no provision made whatsoever for presidential candidates to speak at the Congress. President Mahama spoke in his capacity as former president of this republic. That is the status none of the other contenders have. So he didn't speak in his capacity as presidential candidate.
If you're a former president,
yes,
and you are interested in coming back,
yes,
you should get to the same level as the others. You should lose that right.
No. Yes. Says who? Says who?
Fairness.
Our
says
constitution.
So. Equity says so.
Our constitution is clear. Look, if President Mills were alive, right? President Mills would have had the opportunity to address the delegates as former president. Unfortunately, he's no more. President Rawlings addressed the gathering in a dual capacity, first as a former president of this republic and as the founder of the party. President Mahama addressed us as former president and leader of the party. This is a status that none of the other contenders for the presidential slot of the party have.
Martin, in the name of fairness,
so please,
should that rule, if it does exist, I doubt it does, if it does, or practice, they may have it.
Yeah.
If it does exist, should that rule be amended to say that if you're a former president and you are going to contest, then all other hopefuls or aspirants should also get the same opportunity to speak at the Congress, or you don't speak at all. All of you don't speak.
Okay, that's very reasonable. That's going into the future. It's reasonable. Yes, it's the way to go, because, in these matters, as I stated earlier, we want it to be a participatory democracy. Not all of our brothers and sisters who understand that every rule has an exception. So perhaps the better way to go about it is to amend that in that instance where a former president is also contesting, then if he speaks, the other contestants should also speak. Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. Because without it, in law, for me, I didn't find it wrong, because to every rule, there's an exception. Okay. It's just like, even the powers of the Chief Justice to empanel. You know, cases come which concern the Chief Justice, but the Supreme Court is interpreted over and over that in that case, the Chief Justice still has the right to empanel the bench to go into the case.
Yeah.
And there are several
but we have
other
known
exceptions.
Chief Justices who, at the time when they were doing it manually, so to speak, elected to exercise good judgment and to say, I find myself in conflict of interest, so I will not deal with this in the first place. There are particular people, if they have to appear before their court, they will not sit on the matters. They will, like a judge will decide to recuse themselves just because of a relationship they have with you, which has nothing to do with the case that they are bringing. So sometimes too, you exercise your own conscience. But Kwaku, Benepson says, if he were an aspirant, at this moment, I find it difficult to say aspirant because they are really not. If he were an aspirant, then after what happened, he would quit.
Oh,
Mahama was allowed to speak, and his campaign song was played throughout.
Yeah, see, I think they are aspirants. They are not candidates.
Okay.
They are aspirants.
Okay.
And you see, if they hadn't been playing the Mahama songs to complement his physical presence there, perhaps you could ignore the fact that as a former president, on such an occasion, he had been given an opportunity to make an address. But when he appears physically to present messages, and at the same forum, you hear those campaign songs, it's difficult not to say they are giving him an undue advantage.
Okay.
I think it's superfluous and needless. The same thing happened within the MPP contest, if you recall. And on this table, we took them on.
Right.
With regional chairmen and this all trooping to Nanado's house to say, we have endorsed you, we've endorsed you. We sat here. I took part in condemning those. It was needless.
Cabo defending all the Nanado songs they were playing.
Yes, it was needless because it was clear that the man had the advantage, he would emerge their flag bearer. Same with John Mahama. He's going to win, hands down.
Okay.
So it's superfluous and needless. But please, the Rawlings thing. Well, he said he spoke in coded form, but he's giving us at least some hint. And if you permit me, I'll quote. He says, that is when Ghanaian Times reporter asked him to explain. He says, we are not listening to our inner voice, our conscience, that godly voice in our nature. If we were, we would not be making the terrible mistakes we have been making. Pretty terrible mistakes. He was telling them, listen to yourself, not listen to each other. And before then, he made a point about the speaker that has spoken before them. Reference former President Mahama and the things he had said and how, if they got an opportunity, they would deal with the issue. Mr. Rawlings was sounding the note of caution relative to hypocrisy and double standards. That's all he was doing. He was telling them that some of the things you are standing there saying, corruption, this, that, money, incompetence, all that, check yourself. You're almost the same. That's all he was saying, even though, let me see, President Rawlings should also listen to himself.
Interesting. Yes, Kwenka, what do you also say about this development? Does it really matter that, they waited for the context to be over before they brought the former president in and also, played his song and everybody else was dancing, all the elected executives and even those who lost, they were all dancing to the song.
I nearly said that the conclusions of Benepson were apt. I nearly said so when you sought to refer to what he said. I nearly said that it was apt. Clearly, it looks like it's a cooked process. I mean, quite tilting towards one person. All the others are just accompanying him to the land that they are struggling to get to. Okay. No, it's very clear. I mean, it's so serious. Because if you look at the atmosphere at the Congress, the speeches that were delivered, the conduct of the people, even the organizers and the way they were, it was a choreographed atmosphere.
Yeah, they let the slaughter.
Yes. I'm being very candid with you. Yeah. It looks like for a moment that they just try to kill competition. And say that, look, you are the candidate, the rest, we're just waiting for the day. The whole atmosphere, the actions and conduct of individuals. I mean, later on I heard a member of the committee that organized the process.
Right.
I think the Honorable Alex
Segbefia, yeah.
Yeah, he said they were going to institute an inquiry into why the songs were played. Wow, I heard that.
Okay.
I heard that, and that really shocked me, because the thing happened in your presence, and then you're going to institute an inquiry to do what?
No, but
To
something.
find what?
Okay, all right.
So I want to say that
we take a break
what they're
here.
doing, they have cooked the whole process for him. Is we
take a break here. When we return,
I
I'll share your views and comments that have come in. But let me share this one from Fojifa in Kumasi. He says that the decision to change government is the prerogative of voters and not how many macho men are deployed at the polling stations. It's amazing how political parties ignore this fact. Ruling parties lose elections and claim that they are cheated. Yeah. Opposition parties lose elections and also claim that they are cheated, all pretending voters can't decide for themselves. All right, we'll be right back.